about second breakfast.
Time for second breakfast.
What's up, everybody? Monster from Breakdowns for Breakfast here with another second breakfast. Now, if you are listening to this, it is when it comes out. It is a Thursday morning, and the Tuesday before this Thursday morning, you may have listened to our episode on Pantera's album, Far Beyond Driven. Now, I am recording this before I record that, so I can't speak for certainty, but I probably brought up Pantera's guitar player, Dimebag Darrell, once or twice during that episode. Needless to say, I have brought up Pantera and Dimebag Darrell multiple times on multiple episodes because I love him. I think Pantera is one of the greatest metal bands of all time, and I think Pantera is one of the greatest guitar players of all time. And so, when he passed away tragically from a gunshot while performing on stage, I was heartbroken. And instead of just glossing over that in the episode, which again, like I said, maybe it comes up, maybe it doesn't, I'm not sure. I wanted to go into some actual history of the man and of what actually happened to him at the tragic end of his life. So this is going to be kind of fun, but it's also going to be kind of sad. But I just wanted to share, as a guitar player, as a Pantera fan, I think Dimebag Darrell is one of the all-time greats. And so I just wanted to spotlight him for a few minutes. So Darrell Lance Abbott was born in Enos, Texas on August 20th, 1966. He was the second son to Carolyn and Jerry Abbott. Now, Jerry Abbott was actually a country music producer. His older brother, Darrell's older brother, was a guy by the name of Vincent Paul Abbott, who, again, probably came up once or twice in our Far Beyond Driven episode. That would be Vinnie Paul, the drummer of Pantera. Darrell took up guitar when he was around 12 years old. His first guitar, everybody knows him for the Washburns and the Deans with the big, crazy body design. But his first guitar was actually a Les Paul style Hondo, which is a little different. He also received a pig nose amplifier on that 12th birthday. His biggest influences when he was a kid were Black Sabbath, Kiss, Judas Priest, and probably his biggest on his specific guitar playing was Eddie Van Halen. Now, Vinny played drums before Darrell got his first guitar. And Darrell wanted to be like his big brother and play drums. And Vinny basically said, I thought this was cute. He said, I just got better than him and wouldn't let him play my drums anymore. So they basically said, all right, so Dime focused, well, not Dime yet. Darrell focused on guitar, Vinny on drums. And it was said that their first jam session consisted of 6 hours of Smoke on the Water, which that sounds like a horrible thing to sit through. At age 14, Darrell started playing guitar in local competitions. He was already so good that he was, after a couple winning a few, they told him, you're not allowed to compete anymore. Nobody else is as good as you, and it's not fair. So instead of being able to compete in the guitar competitions, he got to judge them instead. And he said that was a lot of fun, and he really enjoyed doing that. So in 1981, Darrell and Vinny formed a band called Pantera. Essentially what happened was a couple of guys asked Vinny to join their band, and Vinny said, only if my brother can join too. And they said, sure, whatever. And that became Pantera. At the time, that band had a guy named Terry Glaze playing guitar. Well, the singer for this iteration of Pantera this iteration did not last long at all. The singer eventually, like 1 year later, said that he was out. And since they had Darrell now playing guitar, Terry Glaze switched to vocals, and around this time Rex Brown came in to play bass. So we've got the original lineup of Pantera, sans Phil Anselmo, but we'll get to him in a minute. Funny sidebar, something very similar happened around, I want to say it was like maybe 89 or so, before Pantera really became Pantera. We'll get there. Dave Mustaine asked Dimebag if he wanted to join Megadeth. And he basically said, sure, but my brother Vinny's going to play drums. And Mustaine said, nah, we don't need a drummer. We just need a guitar player. And so he didn't join, which, could you imagine a world where Pantera doesn't exist, but Dimebag Darrell is in Megadeth? That is a world I do not want to live in, and I do not want to think about anymore. So anyway, by the mid-'80s, the Avett Brothers were starting to get into heavier stuff. So when Terry Glaze switched to vocals, they did 3 albums with him as the singer, and they were very much in the glam metal vibe. The matter of fact, before he was known as Dimebag Darrell, during these days, he was known as Diamond Darrell. And they all wore the spandex, and they had the teased up hair, and it was very much in the vein of like a Motley Crue kind of thing. But by the mid-'80s, that's when the Vinny and Darrell started getting into more heavy stuff. They started listening to a lot of Metallica, a lot of Slayer, and they said, you know what, we want to go into a heavier direction. Glaze didn't want to do that. He wanted to stick to kind of what they were doing, and so due to differences in musical taste, and also I didn't get into it, but there was some contract dispute. Glaze left the band because actually these 3 albums that they did with Glaze, they were on a record label. Wasn't a huge label, but you can find all these on Spotify and stuff. And it's fun listening to Dimebag and Vinny and kind of hearing the progression, because I mean, they were kids when they were doing these albums. But it's a little silly and it's a little cheesy. There's definitely a big jump coming up. So in 1986, Glaze quit, and at the end of 86 is when they got Phil Anselmo. Now, they did 1 album with Phil. It was called, I believe it was called Power Metal, where it's right on the cusp. It's not as glam and Guns N' Roses-y as the first 3 albums, but it ain't the Pantera we know now quite yet. But you could feel it going that way. The Pantera that we all know really came into existence July 24th, 1990, when Pantera released the album Cowboys from Hell. Now, again, I'm recording this before I record the breakdown on Far Beyond Driven, so I don't know what I said there. I don't know if I'm just repeating myself here. But Cowboys from Hell, and then their next album, Vulgar Display of Power, released February 25th, 1992, are almost perfect albums. They are the absolute definition of groove metal. The songwriting is impeccable. Phil's voice is astonishingly good on those 2 records. And I mean, there's not a lot of fat on either one of those albums. And this was, I mean, I don't want to say like immediate success, but Cowboys from Hell and followed up by Vulgar Display of Power, I mean, they skyrocketed within a couple of years. And remember I said we were going, it was Diamond Darrell. Well, around 92, 93 is when he started to call himself Dimebag Darrell. And a matter of fact, in 1994's Far Beyond Driven, that's the first time in the liner notes he is listed as Dimebag Darrell in the actual CD case. So after this, Pantera has a whole bunch of issues internally. I don't want to get into all of that, but basically, long story short, Phil was abusing drugs. Dime was an alcoholic. They were fighting with each other. There was all kinds of ugly stuff said, mostly coming from Phil, but it was just really not nice stuff, and it was kind of inconsolable, and they could not reconcile this. It was a pretty nasty split. But Vinny and Dime, obviously, you know, as we've seen over the years with other bands and Megadeth and stuff, these 2 dudes are staying together. So in 2003, they started a new band called Damage Plan. And basically what they wanted to do was basically continue Pantera. But they knew that they probably weren't going to be able to do that using the name Pantera without Phil Anselmo. It would be a huge legal battle, and it just wouldn't be worth it. So they basically got a different singer. I can't remember his name, and a different bass player. And they were, like I said, their goal was to basically make Pantera 2.0. Now, I'll be honest with you. I have not listened to this Damage Plan album from start to finish. I remember being real excited when it came out, and I did not really enjoy it. But I haven't probably listened to it at all in at least 10, probably 20 years. So maybe if I go back and listen to it now, maybe I feel a little bit differently. I don't know. Probably be worth checking out again. Maybe we'll do it on the show. Who knows? But so anyway, so they released their album Newfound Power on February 10th of 2004. The band would pretty much spend almost the entirety of 2004 on the road promoting that album until December 8th, 2004. Damage Plan was performing at a nightclub in Columbus, Ohio called the Alrosa Villa. They got about 30 seconds into their first song when a man ran up on stage and started firing a 9mm Beretta pistol. Dimebag was hit several times. The head of security for the band, Jeffrey Thompson, tackled the shooter, but was fatally shot in the struggle. Nathan Bray, a fan of the band, and Aaron Hawk, an employee of the nightclub, were also shot and killed while trying to help. Dimebag Darrell was only 38 years old when he was shot and killed. The shooter was eventually taken down. He was shot in the head with a shotgun by the responding officer, James Neigemeyer. The shooter was 25-year-old Nathan Gale. They said the motive was unknown. However, Gale had a history of mental health issues. He was a former member of the United States Marine Corps and had been discharged. Now, he claims he was discharged because he had paranoid schizophrenia, and he actually had medication that he was supposed to take for that he just basically chose not to take. The way it's written everywhere I see it kind of gives the impression that maybe he didn't have formal documentation that he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. But either way, he was discharged and he had severe mental health problems. Weeks leading up to the shooting, friends and family said they could see like some real erratic behavior in Gale. His mom reportedly said one time she caught him petting a dog that wasn't there. Gale has also gone on to say he had told people that the guys in Pantera had stole his lyrics and were even trying to steal his identity. I've seen a couple reports where the night of the shooting, he was there, and it was December in Columbus, Ohio, which I don't know if anybody knows about that part of America, but in December, it's cold. It's very cold. And apparently he was just like out there hanging out, sitting in his car. And matter of fact, I think I heard that the security for the venue asked him to move his car multiple times because he was blocking the area. And he didn't have a ticket for the show either. And there's reports of people coming up to him and talking to him like, dude, what are you doing out here? It's freezing cold. And he was like, I'm here to see Damage Plan. And they were like, well, why don't you just go ahead inside? It's cold. And he's like, nope, I don't want to see any of the local bands. I'm just here to see Damage Plan. And then, like I said, Damage Plan wasn't even 30 seconds into their first song when he ran up on stage and did this. Later that month, there was a huge memorial held for Dimebag and had a big funeral. I mean, it was like rock and roll royalty. Like all the guys you would think would be there were there. And one of the most touching moments was Eddie Van Halen actually put one of his original black and yellow guitars in the casket with Dimebag Darrell. His quote was something along the lines of, a true original deserves a true original, because I think the family had just mentioned to him, like, hey, he was a huge fan. Could you maybe like a replica? And he gave the one that he actually played. One other fun note about this is the casket that Dime was buried in was just covered in Kiss artwork. I've seen pictures of it. It's, I'm not a big Kiss fan at all, but if you were a Kiss fan, that's the perfect coffin for you. And unfortunately, that was the end of Dimebag's life. Again, he was only 38 years old, and he was actually shot a day before my birthday. In 2004, I would have been turning 19, I think. And I remember this happening and seeing it on the news and being heartbroken. I mean, Pantera was never one of my favorite bands, but I've always had a lot of love and respect for them, especially those first couple albums. Not the glam metal ones, but Cowboys from Hell and Vulgar. And, even in like some of his side projects, I wasn't a huge fan of Damage Plan, but there is a really cool album out there that I will recommend checking out. It's been a while since I've listened to it, and it is a little, you got to kind of be in the mindset for it. But there's an album called Rebel Meets Rebel, and it's essentially Pantera. It's Vinny, Dime, and Rex Brown on bass, and David Allan Coe singing and playing piano. Now, this is a later in his life David Allan Coe, and you can hear that. But Dime sings some of the lyrics. There is this kind of country metal thing going on. Some of the songs are a lot of fun. And that's another thing about Dimebag Darrell, is he was fun. I never met him, but I've seen tons of home videos. I was this guy in my bands. I always had the camera with me. I was always filming stuff. I was always talking to people, and that was Dime. Everywhere he went, he had this video camera, and you can find all this stuff on YouTube. And I will say, there's a big difference between the Pantera home videos and Dimebag Darrell's home videos, because Pantera were known for going out of control, and Dime would too. Dime would hit the stories of his drinking are legendary. Just ask anybody that was around him. But at the end of the day, he was a genuinely good-hearted person. From everything that I've seen, he seems like an absolute wonderful person to be around. I think he was very genuine, and his guitar playing is one of a kind. And, you can hear guitar players all the time, and yes, they sound like them, but they also, you hear all these influences and stuff. Nobody sounded like Dime. That tone, the way he played, those kind of leads, he's in a category all of his own. And so I just wanted to spend a few extra minutes spotlighting him. Again, I'm nowhere near the kind of guitar player he was, but he is a huge influence on my taste in music, the way I like to play guitar. And I think he was I hate what happened. I can only imagine that if he would have been able to live, to however old, he would have put out more records with more bands. I'll be honest with you, the way things were going, I don't know that Vinny and Dime would ever get back with Phil and that ever get reconciled. Probably not. But I could definitely see Dime and Vinny doing another project and it being really damn good. So, yeah, are you a fan of Pantera? Were you at least a fan of Dimebag's guitar playing? I'm sure if you're a music person, you probably knew this story about how he passed. But yeah, I just wanted to share that. Now, as you go through your day, I always say, have a great day. This was kind of a sour story, but instead of letting it be a downer, just remember, you don't know how long you have. You don't know how long your friends and family have. So be good to one another. Be sweet to one another. Hug your loved ones. Tell them you love them. Now.